Hey, yo, welcome to the Godcast.
I hope y'all are buckled up, because things are about to get weird.
I don't understand why you chose me.
You want to change the world, son. So do I.
Where are we at in terms of history on the timeline? Where are we exactly? I'm just trying to uncover the truth and bring forth what I can see as the truth. The Bible seemed to be predicting more things than any other conspiracy theory type information, Look, one thing's for certain, that there is so much power in the name of Jesus Christ. That I know for sure.
Welcome to Godcast.
Welcome to Godcast.
The Goodness Over Darkness.
The Goodness Over Darkness podcast.
Here is your host.
Here's your host, Millenial Kingdom.
Emmanuel Kingdom.
Welcome to the light.
Welcome to the light.
Welcome to the light.
It's showtime. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. I'm your host, Emmanuel Kingdom, and with me is Mimi.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Mimi.
Hello, Todd.
How are you, my love?
I am well.
So, on this episode, I had on, Mimi was at work. I had on special guest Whitney Strock.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Whitney.
Yeah,
Duty called.
I can't wait for you two to get together because Whitney is a wealth of information. And
We kind of got together on Facebook yesterday.
okay.
We haven't talked to one another yet, but we've friended one another.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, you'll like her because she talks about all the same stuff we do. She's into all this same stuff.
Yeah, she's doing some busy work I see on her Facebook.
She's a landscaper.
No, she's going to, I believe it's school meetings and
she does that,
speaking her truth with her husband.
Yep, the whole family, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she's
We see you.
very much similar to me and all the things we're doing. We talked about that in the episode, that we've been doing all the same types of things at the same times of the year and the same years.
Mm-hmm.
It's very odd. And the way we met was a Facebook Tartaria group, mud floods. She posted something really interesting, and I was like, wow, I love all of this. And I was like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And she did want to, but we couldn't get together because we had to do it at a certain time frame, and I wasn't getting off work at the right times to be able to do it, or she was at work when I was available to do it. So it took a month and a half, and it was just on the afternoon.
Happens when it happens.
Yeah, on the afternoon of that day, I was getting gas on my way home, and it was early, and I was like, oh, hey, can you do it? And she was like, yeah, I'm actually home and I'm not supposed to be. So it was just a synchronicity in itself. It was just happened, just like that. When it's ready, it's ready. It's all divine timing. That's why I don't get too upset when any guests or any offered guests don't respond or don't come on for whatever reason. I'm like, all right, God didn't want me to go down that path for whatever reason. And then when I was ready for this conversation and she was ready for it and the public was ready for it, boom, it happens. So Whitney, we get into the mud floods. We get into Jesus Christ. Did the rapture already happen? Did the rapture already occur? In my opinion and hers, yes, it has. And we get into that a large section of our time is spent on talking about these types of possibilities. Where are we according to the Bible? She's very familiar with biblical prophecy. She sent me so many videos that we discuss about in the during the episode that I have since watched many of them, and wow, they are just some really great pieces of information.
Are you going to link some of those?
Yeah, I will link some of them. So I'll bring them. The one thing is Nephilim are clowns. We've been discussing that recently in episodes. Yeah. And so she comes on, she talks about, yes, she believes Nephilim are clowns as well. And this, we didn't speak other than the first time we talked to say that she was going to come on. We don't speak, well, we weren't speaking, but we have since had hours of conversations on the phone talking about this type of stuff. But so everything in this episode is like, she didn't listen to my podcast knowing that I was talking about Nephilim or clowns. This is things that we're coming to independently and then coming together, and it's like mind-blowing stuff. So she talks about the liquid crystallization, but she doesn't use that term. But what she's describing, that sometimes there's these magnetic effects in cameras or on your screen, and it'll be attached to just the person, and it won't be affecting everything else behind it. And it becomes the white and black staticky lines that look like Beetlejuice's outfit. And Beetlejuice,
Or like barcodes.
okay,
Something like
yeah,
that?
yeah, exactly, yeah. And Beetlejuice
Interesting.
is a Nephilim. If he has all the characteristics of the trickster, of being in the dead, of having the static, of getting people to see things his way. He's a demon. Demons are Nephilim. Nephilim are demons. You see them when you smoke DMT. We call them machine elves or jesters or maybe gnomes or that type of character. They're all demons. That's what that is. And you can see it's called liquid crystallization. And you can see that it starts to, so it'll be like a big block. So anyone watching the video right now, you can see like on my face, it'll be like a square on my cheek. And it'll be going round and round in like the Twilight Zone, but it's more boxy, and it's only affecting the person. So I'll try to remember to link all these links. If Mimi, you can write that down so I can link all these.
What am I writing?
That I'm linking all the videos.
Link all the links.
Yeah,
Link
yeah.
all the links. Got it.
Because this is something spectacular, and what this gave me the idea, the thought that maybe our cell phones, our TVs, and our computers, anything we're looking into a screen, maybe we're peering into another dimension, because what we see on the screen is not what we see in real life. Are we looking at an alternate dimension in there? And is that dimension making us do things that it's doing? And is that dimension where the Nephilim, the demons that I'm discussing, live? Is that what the checkerboard is for the Freemasons? The static, when you turn on the TV, well, it doesn't really do it anymore. Everything's more digitalized. But back in the day, remember when TV was just over the open air, you get a lot of static, right? And you see, if you can imagine zoomed in, that would be some kind of like checkerboard looking thing. It's all just very strange. But also, when we look at our recorded history, and clowns' favorite colors are what? Red, right? Red, black, and white. So, like the color is red, but black and white is there as well. So, in history, the first colors that were described were black, and then white, and then red, and then green, and then yellow. That's the 5 colors that were only talked about. Only those 5 colors were discussed, and in that order for all of them, everywhere. It's weird. They didn't have the color blue. They would describe, I think Plato described the ocean as wine-like. They didn't have the color blue. They didn't have a word for it. So if you imagine that this realm, what I'm saying here, began as black and white, and then color slowly was poured into it, just like with clowns going from black and white to then white and red. Is that a thing that happens? And did the blonde hair, blue eyes, like the blonde would kind of be like a white, maybe not, maybe it's more yellow, but I'm just thinking along the lines of maybe that came after the red and red hair, green eyes. It's just another version of that, an offshoot of it. And so did that realm somehow start to grow in conjunction with our realm? And that's what the Twilight Zone is. It's literally, yeah, that's what the Twilight Zone is literally the other dimension. And we're electrical beings in an electrical universe. and they somehow projected themselves here and got us to use these devices that let them in here. And how do they do that? By talking to us from the other side and getting us to do psychedelics, and so that we could interact with them, because then we would be electrical beings. Because when we're psychedelics or doing psychedelics and we're tripping, we're in the astral world. So that's the only way they could communicate with us. So somehow they were able to get the humans to do that so that they could interact. And there you go. That they snuck in through our phones. The Roswell crash, they've been coming through our systems. The Carrington event. It was somehow they plugged into the earth rather than having free energy everywhere. The earth is its own living device that we live in. That's a sphere, but there's flat land that goes from wall to wall, and you can dig into it like the hollow earth, but they're just like caves, kind of. You just keep going down because it is a ball, and we are somewhere in the middle. So there's the rest of it is dirt and water, just keeps going down and down. So that makes sense.
You just had a thought and ran with it.
This is all just coming to me
Yeah,
right now.
gotcha.
This is incredible. Yeah. So these are the types of things that we talk about. She's very big into Jesus. She calls Jesus Yeshua, and we've actually spoken since. And you know how the Bible says that there's one name, right? That there's one name, not two, not Yahweh and Jesus. But if we know Jesus, when he was a person, was Yeshua, would be more accurate, right?
Yeah.
So instead of Yahweh and Yeshua, if you remove the snake from Yeshua, it would be Yahuwah, which is closer to Yahweh. And there's also, we talk about the...
I guess the pronunciation would be the same.
We're
about.
similar,
If
If you could combine...
phonetically sounded it out, yeah.
Right, if you could get in there, if you could take the two names and combine it to one to be one specific word, like Yahuwah, something to that effect. I don't know exactly how it would be pronounced. But if you're to take it like that, because she brings the idea that, so Tartaria was two different things. There was Tartaria, which was Tartarus, which is hell, and that was the mimicry of the Millennial Kingdom, the millennial reign of Christ on earth, which there's several different 1,000-year empires, Christian empires, that have already existed on earth. Just history tells us they were different times, so we don't think of it in that way. But if you think that maybe the timeline's deceived, then put them all together and boom, you have the 1,000-year reign of Christ in history. It has already happened. So back to what I was saying, was there are many of these archways and these architecture, beautiful architecture buildings from the ancient times that say A-E-I-O-U on them. And the breath of life is God. God is the breath of life. And so when you speak, the way you pronounce the vowels are different than the way you pronounce the consonants. It's like you breathe outwards almost rather than projecting outwards. So it's like an air thing with the A-E-I-O-U, which would be the breath of life, would be an air thing. And, it's just really mind-blowing when you start to think of things like this, that it was perverted in that way, that they would stick snakes on his name, Jesus. And J is just like a representative of a Y.
Yeah, if you took out the two S's there, you would just have J-E-U.
Yeah, and the J would have like a Y sound.
Right. Ooh.
And
okay.
the J is a hook. They hook you. Hook you with the two snakes.
Maybe you need a new shirt.
Well, but there is a lot of power in the name of Jesus Christ. I do know that. But
maybe if you say it right.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah, but but Jesus Christ, the name itself does have a lot of power. But yeah, there is one power, there is one name for our creator. So these are some of the things that we were talking about. And I forget, I was just about to say something there something else that I forgot to add on with the AEIOU. I don't know. Maybe I'll think of it when I'm going here, but it's very interesting. I think the rapture did occur, and that the Millennial Kingdom did happen. I think we're in the final judgment is coming. And I mean, this is just the craziness that is the world right now. And everything is inverted, everything's backwards. Satan has manipulated everything to be deception, to be perverted. Just all of it. And we live backwards, very much so. So that's the type of stuff that you're going to look forward to in this episode. Whitney, she just has a regular Facebook page. She doesn't have anything special. She should be getting something soon. I don't know what exactly, but I think that she's going to be having maybe a podcast soon. I told her she has open door to this podcast all times. She wants to come speak as long as we can link up. She is free to come on here. So anyway, I guess I'll link her Facebook in the.
Should probably ask her first.
Yeah, I'll find out from her, but we'll see. Maybe I will. Maybe she'll just want you to go to the Tartaria Facebook pages that she's in, and the Millennial Kingdom Facebook pages she's in, because she's really smart. So, well, I guess we'll find out. To be determined. So make sure you stay tuned at the end of the episode for a preview of the next episode. And without further ado, here is Whitney Strock. Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who has been led to researching Tartaria through her faith in Jesus Christ. She is a mother and a wife who has been discovering some great information that may help us all understand the current world that we reside in. Everybody, welcome Whitney Strock to the show. Hello, Whitney. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing excellent. Why don't you tell my audience a little bit about yourself and how you got into researching Tartaria?
Well, so my awakening started very slowly years ago when I was in college with just researching 9/11. So I've known for a very long time that was an inside job, but I kind of just left it at that. I didn't think it was related to anything else. Just, why would they do that? Oh, okay, they want to go to war over there. They want the oil. I bought the rest of the narrative, just not that they did it. So I really got slapped awake, I guess, because of COVID. I mean, as soon as it kind of hit the scene, I was like, no, something just don't feel right. It's not setting right. There was a lot of information that was coming out that was from scientists, was from reputable sources that was being buried. So I was like, okay, something else is kind of going on here. So that led me to the Fall of Cabal videos and the Out of Shadow and the trafficking and the elites, and that kind of snowballed from there with all of that. So I found all of that first, and then I actually was introduced to a person because of my craziness through a mutual friend that was like, you crazy people will like each other. So I actually did a podcast with him, which was the first podcast I ever done, and he was like, you have part of it, but you don't have all of it. And so he mentioned in that podcast, because I just kept talking about how it was my reality had burned to the ground, right?
What was the name of that podcast?
Mental Mastery Alliance.
Okay, I think I've heard of that actually. Who is that?
Adam Walton, I think's his name.
That sounds very familiar. I don't know.
He's out of Canada.
Okay. Is he linked up with Matt Belair?
I don't know.
Because I think Matt Belair is also in Canada, and he has a podcast with a similar name. So maybe it's just I know
coincidence. He has done some stuff with Sam Tripoli.
Okay. Yeah, Mapalera has been on Sam Tripoli's show. Yeah.
Okay, so they probably do all know each other.
Yeah.
So I went on his, and he was like, you have part of it, but you don't have all of it. Like, maybe you should look into this other stuff. And so he mentioned the mud floods in Tartaria, and I don't even remember what else, but of course.
So that was earlier this year you found that out?
No. That was like the end of the year last year.
Okay.
But
so the end of 2020.
Yeah,
Okay.
somewhere around October maybe of last year.
Okay.
So I got off that podcast with more questions than answers, and just this burning passion to understand, but I still was really wrapped up in the election. So the election was happening and all of the deceptions that was going into that, and it all just kind of goes together.
It does.
So, one thing leads to the other. And at first I was thinking, okay, they're all individual conspiracy theories, right? So I would search this for a while, and I didn't read everything, but I would feel like I had a good grasp on it. And of course, you can't watch one thing without it leading into something else, somebody mentioning some little something somewhere else. So then you go down that rabbit hole. And it was months that I wasn't sleeping, because I don't want to be on the phone in front of my kids. I want to be present with them. So I would just do it late at night, and I would listen to podcasts at work and things like that. So, shortly after, I don't think he mentioned flat earth, but so I went down the rabbit holes a little bit of Tartaria and the mud floods and the giant trees. And just barely skimming the surface again. I was just super consumed with the election and all that was going on.
Right.
So, and I stayed pretty entrenched with that and like the underground Anon channels and things like that until about February. And about 2 years ago, I started praying for discernment. I started praying for what my spiritual gift was and to trust myself, and that other people would see him through me. I didn't want them to see Whitney anymore. I wanted them to see Jesus through me.
That's so beautiful.
And that was 2 years ago. And then all this stuff started happening and like landing in my lap. And it was, you asked for it, like it kind of was like that. You asked for truth here. You're never going to figure out the truth, but everything you think you know is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So about February, again, I'm just praying for discernment and for him to lead my steps and guide me and what I was supposed to do as a mom, as a wife, as an entrepreneur, in my awakening. And he told me, step away from the election. Like, you have to put this down. What's going to happen is going to happen with or without you. There's nothing you can do here. So I walked away. And for 2 weeks, I slept like a baby. All night long. It was ridiculous, because he'd been waking me up throughout the night for a year probably. So he let me rest for like 2 weeks. And then one of the Anons that I fought, he woke me up in the middle of the night. It was like 3:00 in the morning and told me to go. It wasn't a voice like, go look at this, but it was just, I can't go back to sleep without going to look at this. Like, go look at this channel. And so I went to look at one of the Anons that I follow, and he had posted about flat earth. And specifically Mandela effects concerning Earth and where we are on the arm of the Milky Way, right?
Okay.
Which was specifically different than what I remember learning. I've always been just absolutely, I love the sky. I've always paid attention, full moon, stars, whatever my grandmother taught me about, a lot of constellations and things when I was a kid. So I've always paid super close attention, and I was like, wait, that's not what I learned. And so I Googled, where we are, whatever. And it was specifically different than what I specifically remember learning. And I was like, pump the brakes. And it kind of all just snowballed from there. I found flat earth, which really led me to Yeshua. Apart from Jesus. And my connection since then has just been, you can't even put it in words. There are no words for it. Somebody who hasn't been through it can't understand it.
That's amazing. So you said Yeshua rather than Jesus. So what was the difference for you?
So just all of the deceptions, everything. I mean, they can't prove gravity. There's no picture of Earth. There's no.
No, well, so I meant between Jesus and Yeshua. Is there a difference?
Well, so and that's what I'm saying. It was
Oh,
part
okay.
of what I discovered to be part of the deception. So there are
okay.
some people who call it a sacred name cult. And that's fine, but once you start digging into this, some people are like, well, Jesus is his name in English. But it's not. If you transfer what his name was in the original Hebrew text directly to English without going through Greek, his name is Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, in Greek, Joshua and Jesus were the same name. So for me, that's how the devil has gotten people to reconcile in their mind, calling him the wrong name.
Okay, that's interesting.
So for me, it was part of the deception. Like almost to the point, I mean, you have to call him Jesus because people don't know what you're talking about. Like they don't even know.
Right.
People in this know, but the rest of the world has no idea. And I didn't. Like I'm not talking bad about them. I mean, until 6 months ago, I had no idea that his name wasn't Jesus.
Right, and there was actually a Jesus of Barbados that the Hebrews set free rather than Jesus Christ, Jesus ben Joseph, as it would have been known, or Yeshua ben Joseph, it would have been known as. So for me, the name Jesus, we have to use that name because that is the name, and there is only one name. So even though the demons and Satan changed the name, the message and the love, because Jesus doesn't care what you call him,
right.
Jesus is just going to love you. So the love behind it still carried the same weight. So
right.
So that's
and
why
I think
they
that's
still
the
run
only
from
reason that as Christians we've been able to make progress. Because like what we were talking about before, I think the frequency of the name is wrong.
Okay.
I think the frequency of his actual name carries more weight. And I will tell you that since I started praying in his actual name, man, like my blessings have been compounded in ways that if you don't know me, if you hadn't seen it all happen, we'd be here all day just explaining how this has all unfolded in my life in just the past 3 years. I mean, just day and night difference. But just in the last 6 months, since I started praying in his name, and the book of Acts says there is salvation in one name only. And I think that's in there specifically because the people writing the Bible maybe not knew why they were supposed to write certain things, but it says that all of this knowledge comes out in the time that we need it, right? Well, all this is just coming out. I mean, in the last, some people have been awake for a lot longer than me, so we'll call it 2 decades, right? But for the last 2 decades, this is all this truth is starting to be uncovered and come out,
right?
Whatever. And I think that scripture is in there specifically for, yes, there's power in the name of Jesus because the love is still behind the message. But when you get it right, and I mean really right, that power is just, you can't.
That's interesting. I'll have to give that a look into. I haven't been compelled at all to look into the name Yeshua. I mean, I know of it and all of that, of course, but I haven't been led in that direction. So that's interesting. Maybe I'll check that out.
Well, see, and I found that with the Great Vowel shift. That was all
right. That was very interesting. You introduced this to me, and this is a very weird thing. So go ahead. You can say what you were going to say.
Well, it was part of what I understood with the Great Vowel shift because the vowels, so when the Hebrews would write God's name, they left the vowels out. So it's YWHW because it was too holy of a name to write out, and the Spirit of God is in the vowels.
Okay. That's interesting. And it's maybe AEIOU could maybe be pronounced Yahweh, or maybe it used to be pronounced Yahweh.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm saying. So much has been deleted and done away with and burned up and everything else. But and what led me to that is I found the Babel effect video, which was about the Great Vowel Shift. And a lot of his videos were showing like these, what we call Tartarian buildings, these Tartarian structures that had AEIOU on them. And I was like, okay, well, what is this? And then I saw in one of the groups that I'm in, somebody talking about the Cathars and that they were hunted down and murdered by the Catholic Church, basically. And they believed in one God. They were very spiritual, but they wanted nothing to do with the ritualism of church.
Right.
So they did away with them and they burned them at the stake because they were witches.
And they had AEIOU on their buildings, you said?
Yeah, so the videos, he does a video with Janus. He does a video, which is Baphomet, but it was the name of the Roman god that is like in the place of Baphomet. And he was just showing that there were all these letters, AEIOU, on all these buildings and all these inscriptions. And if you look at like ancient Roman structures that were told are Roman structures, but they're, these megalithic structures that we can't build today, they have, the vowels on them. And he showed all these pictures. And of course, you can't Google search it and find anything. But he showed all these pictures of stuff, and it had the AEIOU, but then it had the double-headed phoenix.
Okay.
Which is, supposed to be a symbol of Satan and him rising from the ashes. And it's hard to tell what is what because so much has been added to deceive.
Yeah.
Right. But so when I went to search, obviously there are still search engines that you can use that aren't Google. And so I went and I searched it, and there are some extra biblical texts that reference God as AI or I think it was IA because it's not artificial intelligence. I remembered it being the other way.
Okay.
And then there are some that like super long ago that reference the AEIOU, the vowels. And then I found a specific scripture, Exodus 6:3. That was supposed to use the vowels as the name for God. Well, the JPS Tanukh, is that how you say it? Which is a translation of the Bible that's supposed to be a direct translation. So like you can go to like Genesis 1:6 and it would say Elohim there instead of God.
Okay.
A direct translation of the words that were used, because I think it matters what name they called him. And all of those names were just translated as God or Lord.
I agree.
Instead of these other words that give us a meaning, Well, in the original one that's supposed to be a direct translation, the word there that's supposed to be the word for God that they use is just question marks. It doesn't say anything. It just says question marks. Which I was like, that's weird. Like, why wouldn't they just put Elohim or El Shaddai or whatever it was in the original text if that's what it was? It had to have been a different name that they're not telling us.
That's interesting. So for me, I've had, in meditation, I've had the letters YH, WH inscribed on my throat. It was like something grabbed me, pulled me up, and inscribed it right on my throat and then put it back down. And it's like because at first I didn't believe in the name Yahweh. I was like, oh, no, that's some Anunnaki. I was familiar with Enlil being with, I thought it was a son. Maybe it was more like a brother named Yahweh. And that the name Yahweh was just the name chosen by the Israelites out of all the different beings that were there. And maybe that did happen. But there was also... It was told to me when it was inscribed on my throat that Yahweh is the breath of life, that it makes that sound as it goes through you, like Yahweh. That's the noise that it makes. So it's very interesting the way you're saying with the vowels, that rather than the consonants, because I wouldn't have known what it meant had had A, E, I, O, U been inscribed on my throat. That had no meaning to me because I had no concept. But
Right.
having the other letters, it did make sense. So had we switched, maybe it would have been written that way if that's the way that I would have known it as.
Right. So even in singing, because I thought, surely there's got to be something else documented that, the vowels are the breath of life, right? Where this, your spirit, the spirit of creation was. And so sure enough, I go to Google it, and you can find where they teach singers how to sing and how to hold their breath to get to the vowels, because the vowels are where you breathe and the consonants are where you hold your breath. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's the part that really got me, because it's like the breath is coming out of you only when you speak the vowels.
Yeah. And then you hold your breath at the consonants and you take a breath, in between. I was like, oh my gosh. And then you go back, and it's like a light bulb moment that at creation, he spoke it. He spoke it into being, because that sound and that vibration and that frequency went out, and it's literally in everything. So I've been searching this. There are cymatic patterns in fruits. There are cymatic patterns in sands, in waves, in trees, and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. I grew up in the church, so I've never not had that thought that, Earth is beautiful, but man, when you really get it,
right,
it is
the
like
Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah, you see it all in a different light, and it's just so much. And I always thought, looking at the sunset, how could anybody think there's not a God?
Right.
But now, I'm a landscaper. I'm a total plant nerd. That's what I went to school for. And you look at cell patterns and leaves and blades of grass, and I just everywhere, all around us, it is just insane how much it all is resonant frequency. It's all just energy manifesting as whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. And how about the cymatics at the church, the way their windows are all set up?
Right.
That they're all set up, and now there's stained glass windows put in, but maybe the breath of life were to come in if the stained glass windows were removed, and maybe if they had organs pushed up against them like we see in so many buildings, that maybe this was some kind of healing center, and the wind would actually heal you through the organ. You would sit in a room, and the sound that played would heal you. And the churches weren't a place of worship the way we know it, but as a place of healing, literal healing, the way that it's talked about.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think that's why that these places that they call castles or churches or whatever, they didn't have plumbing. They didn't have heating and air, because you didn't live in these buildings. And because I also think that they were part of the 1,000-year reign, and there are scriptures that say that it will be a 7-fold sun. It just was warmer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The climate was more mild. They didn't need those things in those buildings. So, it just, when you first start looking, you kind of just have to let your reality burn down. Because if you go into it with your preconceived notions, you're like, this is crazy. There's no way I've been lied to about everything. Mm-hmm. But then when you start digging, see, for me, I was ready to throw it all out. I was just, as soon as I saw it, I was like, yep, it's all garbage. Let's just get rid of it. Start all over. And I don't think that anybody is ever going to figure it out. We're never going to, in this life, we're never going to know what truth is. Too much has been destroyed. Too much has been burned. Too much has been deleted and lied about and everything. We're just never going to know what the truth is. But for me, I try to read and learn as much as I possibly can, and everything everybody's putting out. Some of it sounds crazy, but then you just pray about it, and you ask for discernment, you ask for wisdom, and you keep what resonates. And what resonates with me, maybe it's not what resonates with you. Thank God it's not a salvation issue, so it doesn't really matter.
Right. That's beautiful right there. And what you said, and before I get into the next thing I want to talk about, the timing of which you spoke about your stuff of being like almost 3 years ago at this point when you first started, and then when Jesus or Yeshua came into your life stronger in February. These are the same points in my life that I started awakening. It was about 3 years ago in September, October, when I started awakening, and then it was between January. I had this injury late January, and from there I had demons chased out of me, and my relationship with Christ has gone from non-existent to, yeah, I mean, I'm with him every moment of the day almost. And so the timing is, very significant that we both share this timing. So it's very awesome.
Well, and from the very beginning, I just always had this thought, and I actually hashtagged a lot of things that I shared on Facebook with Yah is calling his people. He is calling you if you'll listen. And like I said, it's not a salvation issue. So I think the people who refuse to wake up, who can't see through the deception, I don't think it matters. Where I think it matters, with Flat Earth, Tartaria, truth in general, is some of us found God anyway. I found him anyway through the deception. Some people do, but there are millions of people who worship at the altar of science. And science says we can prove this is how it happened. We can prove that the earth isn't flat, even though your Bible says it is. We can prove this, that, and the other. And it's led the soul lure system. It's luring souls away from God. And the power in the words. The power in the words, like we believe the deception because we cast that spell on ourselves with the words that we speak. And we are taught it as children. My daughter is 7 and I homeschool, and she should be learning about the earth. She should be learning about planets and how fast we're spinning and this, that, and the other. And they teach it to you before you're old enough to think through it and go, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
right.
And then you never visit it again. I mean, I don't even remember learning that stuff in school, and you learn it in grade school, and then you move past it. You never revisit something so important as where you live, where you are in the cosmos. Right. It's crazy that we're teaching this to 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and we never visit it again unless you go to college.
Right. And that's the question that really drove me, was like, where am I? Like, and I look around and I ask people, I'm like, where do you think you are? And they say Earth. I'm like, okay, what's that mean? Like, I don't know. I never thought about it past that point. It's like, yeah, that's the question that has driven me.
Well, see, and I've always had really big questions like that, and it always just felt too big to think about it, so I didn't. When I would have those questions, and I would feel really small, and I would feel insignificant. Like, and I was saved, but I felt insignificant because if we're in this vast cosmos of ever expanding space, what is the possibility that there's another planet out there that has life on it? Pretty high, right? I mean,
yeah.
If God is omniscient, all-knowing, he can do anything and say it, think it, and it happens. I mean, he could have done it somewhere else too. So why would he have only done it here? So, and then, I knew what the scripture said, but it's just information without revelation. And 8 months ago now, it was revealed. Like, I got that truth that I'm not a tiny speck of dust in some vast cosmos or something that, he doesn't care about me. And I shed doubt and fear I didn't even know I had. Like,
exactly.
It's just so beautiful. Like, you can't explain it to somebody that doesn't have it, and they think you're nuts. Right. My husband, he thinks I'm crazy. And
well, even spiritual people who reject Jesus, I was talking to people about it, and they're just rejecting it, like flat out, like, no, because I've experienced my communication with aliens, and so I know that's real. And I'm like, but there's another level of awakening that you haven't gotten to yet. I'm like, and I'm trying to help you, but you guys are just rejecting me flat out. You're being as closed-minded as someone who is asleep would be to Jeffrey Epstein. You're being very closed-minded, and if you think you're open-minded, then open your mind and actually give it a shot.
Yeah, just listen to it, and then and have you made the connection with aliens yet?
That they're fallen angels and
Yeah.
that they're Yeah, so you already
Yeah.
know. We never talked
Yeah.
about this, but you
Well,
already know.
Yeah, and like when people are like, "Oh, I believe in aliens," I believe in aliens too. I don't believe they're aliens from outer space. I believe
Right.
they are the fallen angels who,
Or creations of the fallen angels as well.
right. Well, so I believe the fallen angels came to Earth when they fell, right, and then they went in with women, had children, the Nephilim, blah blah blah, whatever. This is the reason, and they're genetic splicing, and they're messing with what God created.
Exactly.
Is why He flooded the earth in the first place. Okay,
Yep.
so their bodies died, but their spirits didn't.
And that's where we have demons.
Yes, yes, and they're still roaming around here. And people, have you seen? I don't know if I sent it to you, but there's a guy who did a video, and he said, and it's the Nephilim look like clowns.
Oh, I haven't seen you. I am very much on top of this. And before you get going, I had a dream last week. Well, not a dream. It was I was about to fall asleep, and I start to connect to the astral world, and there were 4 giant clowns staring around me, and I kept getting the information that the paint is war paint. That's why they paint their faces, and that's why people are traditionally afraid of clowns. But go ahead, you can.
Well, yeah, I mean, just that. So, like, people who have taken certain drugs.
Yeah, I've done it. DMT. You see the jesters.
Yeah, you see them, and like they talk about how that's people seeing
The Nephilim.
another dimension here. That like that's all around us all the time. And okay, so getting back to what I was getting back to, there was one guy who was like a researcher of alien abduction, right? And so, and he wasn't saved at all. And so he was, researching this and all of this. And I don't remember the exact story, but he got saved. And he, just with what he does and then getting saved and finding flat earth, he was like, I believe this is actually happening to people, but what is it? And so he said he started praying about it, and God told him he already had the information to go back and look through his interviews that he'd done before.
Do you know what his name is?
I don't remember. I have it saved in my YouTube though. I'll send it.
Okay.
But anyway, so he went back and he watched like all of the old film, and there was this one interview specifically that God had told him to revisit, that he had the answer, go look. And so he went back and he looked at this specific one, and the person that was telling the story said that it ended abruptly, like threw them back in their bed when they said, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. And that's why I agree with you. There's still power in the name, because they know the love and the energy is still behind it. But it ended. I mean, just like that, it was just over. And so he reached out to his other colleagues, and asked like if they had saw similar recounts of what had happened. And they're like, off the record. And he was like, I mean, yeah, sure, we can be off the record. And they're like, yes. And they gave him one of 2 reasons for not reporting it, because it wasn't in anybody's report anywhere. He said, 1, they didn't know what to make of it. And 2, they didn't want the repercussions of being made fun of if they let people know that there was a spiritual battle, I guess.
Yeah, because Jesus is just Santa Claus.
To it.
Jesus is just Santa Claus to most Americans, where he's make believe. That couldn't possibly be a thing.
Right. Well, and it would contradict the narrative completely, because I mean, like anybody with eyes can see that they've been setting this up for 2-3 years with the D class, that aliens and UFOs and this, that, and the other. I mean, they've been setting it up for the deception that's coming. You look at what they can do with Project Bluebeam, and they put a whole city over China.
Yeah.
I think people saw an entire city in the clouds in China through this project. But I mean, they can literally project anything anywhere.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And have you heard of Jim Williamson?
No.
So he's a pastor. I had him on. So I had a roundtable about fallen angels, Nephilim, secret societies, and alien abductions a week or 2 ago, I guess. And Jim Williamson is a pastor who specializes in alien abductees, helping them get over and through the abductions. I am an abductee myself, and I just had someone on who also had the same thing happening to him. And in every case, it's use the name of Jesus Christ, and they stop it. Well, at first they'll throw you back. They'll come back if you don't realize what made them leave. They'll try to get in again. And once you have the Spirit in you, the Holy Spirit is in you, then they no longer come. So it's quite amazing. But so back to this, like Ronald McDonald is a Nephilim. Like I want everyone that's listening just to be clear that McDonald's is there's some unhealthy things that are said, obviously about McDonald's unhealthy, but things that are cannibalism types of things that we're talking about have been through maybe not every single McDonald's, maybe it's not being purposely done, and there's, it's not every warehouse employee is an evil psychotic person, but the overarching type of things that happen in that industry is you have a Nephilim as the face of the company, and we have all of these myths and legends of giants eating humans. Fee, fi, fo, fum, the Nephilim. There's reasons for this in all of our lore, and all of this, these things that are happening are all linked together, and they wear the face paint as war paint. And so when we talk about clowns, they have huge feet, firstly, and someone very tall would have huge feet. Then they're on stilts, which would make them very tall. And then they have red hair, which always talked about the red hair giants. And then the pale faces because they were white. And also they wear the war paint. And that's why clowns paint their faces. And that's why many, many humans on an inherently subconscious level are terrified of clowns. It's because they're seeing the Nephilim. So, when we think about these things, like if I just say Ronald McDonald's a Nephilim and you don't think about the logic behind it, you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, how dare you say such a thing? But then when you think about it, you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's the thing. Like, we just went out west back in June. And it was right after I started watching the Flat Earth videos and everything. And it talks about how they were, what's it called? Like when you query, they were looking for something. They were.
What, when you're digging?
Yeah.
Like archaeology?
No, like the elites, the Nephilim, whatever. They were harvesting something from out there. And we went to the Grand Canyon, right?
Okay.
No way the Colorado River carved that. There's no way.
Right.
It's not carving. Like, do you realize how much it would have to carve every year to be down that far? And it's not carving that new.
Yeah.
And so it just doesn't make any sense. Well, and then you see, did you know that there was a pyramid?
I know. So I know in the Grand Canyon, it's all labeled Egyptian names, and there's all sorts of Egyptian stuff going on inside the Grand Canyon.
So
but no, I didn't know there's a pyramid.
Yeah. So there's a melted pyramid in the Grand Canyon, and some people were backpacking. It's super dangerous to get there. So, I mean, I have no way of knowing, but the video I watched says that it's protected by park rangers, FBI, whatever. Like,
the
you can't
BLM.
Yep.
Bureau of Land Management.
Right. Yeah. You can't just go out there because it's too dangerous for you to be out there. Listen, if I want to risk my life, this is America. Okay. And I'm free. So, and I'm not free because I'm American. I'm free because I'm a child of God, and my rights were God ordained, not man-made. So
exactly.
Anyway, you can't go out there, but these people were like hiking out there, whatever, and found this in the early 1900s, I think it was. I've been down so many rabbit holes, it's hard for me to remember specifics, but you can Google pyramid in the Grand Canyon and it'll pull it, because the Smithsonian actually financed the expedition to go out there and look at it. So on the outside, it looks like the Grand Canyon, and it looks, like a melted pyramid. Like you can't, outside, you can't really tell like what it is. but you can go inside there and it's all Egyptian. I mean, hieroglyphics everywhere, the big stone, people carved into the walls and everything else. And it says that they took hundreds of artifacts out there and none of them are on display.
I'm getting the thought all of a sudden about the Tower of Babel possibly being there.
Well, so there's
interesting.
also some people who say that everything that they say is opposites. Like the Dark Ages were actually the Light Ages. That was the millennial reign of Christ. And then the Enlightenment Age was actually the Dark Age, when there was a reset after they left, and they took all of the technology and they've been slowly introducing it to us.
Yeah,
so America is
his
the
story,
new world.
not our story.
Yeah, his story, right? So America is the new world, but it's really the old world.
Yeah, I was just talking about this with our language. Like when Europeans sing in English, they sound American. It's like, I don't think, even though it's the termed English now, I don't think it came from them. I think it came from here.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Like, so not to go like crazy left turn on you, but so I met another person in one of these groups and we've been talking, which is nice because my husband doesn't, I mean, God
you
love
hear
him.
the helicopter coming through? Well,
I don't hear it.
Helicopters. Oh man, I can hear it in my headphones. It's super loud. They're like about to land on my house.
Yeah, no, I can't hear it at all. Well, I mean, we're like an hour from Fort Campbell and they're airborne, so we hear it all the time.
Right.
But anyway, so we've been talking and thankfully I have these people as like outlets to get this stuff off my chest and like try to, link stuff together, because I've come to some conclusions that I'm not seeing anybody else make. I mean, not that my mind is made up, but I'm putting some stuff together that I haven't seen other people put together. And I mean, I'm chomping at the bit to talk to somebody about it. But anyway, so I was talking to him, and of course we see all the, I personally think, which I think you do too, that we're post-trib, post-millennial reign.
Yeah, post-rapture. Yeah.
We're at like Revelations 29, where Satan's been loosed from the pit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's where I think we are. We're not, some people are like full preterists. I think it's all been fulfilled. I don't think that. I think we're at where he's been loosed and he's wreaking havoc and age of deceit, and we have no idea what the truth is about anything.
Exactly.
But he hasn't been dealt with, and the new heaven and the new earth has to come down. That's what I personally.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I gotta pause it for a second because now my whole floor's shaking. Like, let me go say what's going on.
No, you're fine. You're good.
Sorry about that. I didn't say it. I'm not too far from an airfield, but that must have been like 4 or 5 of them. My whole floor started shaking. Like my feet were vibrating. It was like a mini earthquake going on.
Yeah, no, you're fine. So anyway, that's where I think we are. I think we're at 29. Just with everything that I've been finding, and where we are could change tomorrow, because Lord knows what, nobody knows it all. But right. That's where I think we are right now.
Okay, so this is what I really want to get into, because I go back and forth when I see the Tartarian structures, and I actually just had Michelle Gibson on, who said that Tartaria was the Asian version of it, and that in America it was called the Moors, or the Moorish people. Lemuria was the Americas. And I actually, that resonates with me pretty well, that, they would be called different things in different areas.
Right.
So, but I go back and forth between, were these structures, was all of that from the giants that were actually not helping us, or was it the Millennial Kingdom? And I go back and forth because there's evidence right now that can point to it being an evil reign, where there's cannibalism going on, and it's written about, and that they eat their own kind, that they don't actually bury their own kind. They eat them because their flesh shouldn't be buried into this earth. There's very odd things that say that there's evil, but then there's also these pictures of, well, even though we know that the pictures are not Jesus himself from all these different countries, it's the representation of Jesus. Maybe they were Jesus's sons that were living all around the world, and they all were ruling at the same time, and they weren't ruling the way we think of it. They were the representatives of Jesus or Yeshua in all these different countries. So I go back and forth, and it's because there's all these pictures in Spain, France, England, Russia, even all over, and it all raining at the same time frame, and they all look very similar. And I don't know to make heads or tails of it. So what is your take on the Millennial Kingdom versus, was it an evil Luciferian kingdom?
Why couldn't there be both?
Okay, I'm open to that.
So my cousin and I have been talking about that because
Tartaria being the Asian evil one, and
yes.
the Millennial Kingdom being the Americas.
Well, and if you look in these structures that we can't build today, right? We don't have technology to build it today. It clearly was not built by us. There are two structures, but it all gets lumped in as Tartaria, right? But some of it has it's hard without seeing the pictures, but me and my cousin have been talking about this exact thing, because I don't think that, because the Bible references Tartarus, right? This is where the Nephilim is hell. So don't think that Yeshua's Millennial Kingdom would have been called Tartaria.
Right.
Don't be crazy. The word is too similar. I think they're different. We don't know, and we're not going to know what it was called, but there's actually some vowel shift stuff that goes into the Moors, the Mers with that. I don't remember the specifics of it, so I won't get into it super deep, but you can find a search engine that's not, super controlled like Google, and it'll pull it. There's lots of videos out there on the Great Vowel Shift too that are super cool and very informative. But I think there was both. I think
at the same time or different times?
Different times. So I think the Millennial Kingdom was the 1,000 years where history was supposedly lost or manipulated in the Dark Ages.
Okay.
And I think those are the buildings that have been or are being destroyed.
Okay, and was this all over the entire world, the Millennial Kingdom, or was it only the Americas?
I think it was. I think it was everywhere. There are buildings everywhere that kind of line up with it. And if you look at what the Bible says, it talks about after the tribulation is over, right? When the harlot is stoned, which would have been Jerusalem by Rome, with the boulders that they catapulted over that were white, 1 talent each. The Josephus in Wars, is a historical document that accounts that for us. And that's what Revelation says what happened. And that's what happened, I believe. But it says that once that is over, the martyrs, the people who died for Christ during the tribulation, would be raised and would receive their glorified bodies. I think they were giants.
So the glorified body is the giant.
But there's two. I think there are the glorified bodies, but then I think there are also the Nephilim.
Okay, right. But I mean, so what you're saying, the glorified body, you're thinking as a physical giant rather than something metaphysical. Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think they got physical bodies, and they were bigger than normal man.
That is so. Are you familiar with the agrarian? I forget exactly how to say it, but there is an agrarian body that we all get. It's kind of like Pokemon, and this is every animal, plant, and human get it. So you know how like there's Pikachu, and then there's another level up is Raichu, and Chameleon, and Charizard, and whatever. I don't know all their names, but there's different levels. I don't know a whole lot about that. So that's a real thing that really happens to plants, animals, and possibly humans, that we could become into our agrarian body at some point for some reason. So you don't even know about that being a thing, and that was your idea on it. That is putting some puzzle pieces together for me. That is quite brilliant.
Yeah. So in Revelation, it talks about right after the tribulation, because it tells them, do not fear the second death. Like, if you die for Christ during the tribulation, don't fear it, because you will be raised to reign with Christ in the Millennial Kingdom. And I think those, not Jesus' son specifically, but those people who received their glorified bodies were who reigned with Christ over the non-believers that survived through the truth. Because not everybody died.
Right.
Right. So some people survived it, either whether they believed or didn't.
Wow, that is so brilliant. And then they were all raptured, and so
At
I
the
think
end of the 1,000-year reign, they all left. So it was
right.
only the people who didn't believe. And then Revelation, to my understanding, that's when the rest of the dead would be raised.
And given a chance.
And given a chance to choose Jesus. They either died before Jesus came, so they get a chance to choose now. And then my personal belief is that once we've cycled, because he doesn't just set them all back on the earth, but our population has grown exponentially in the last, 100, 200 years. Like the rate of increase is insane. And I don't think they've been honest about it, but I think it's, my personal belief is trying to get through all of those people before the end of the age of deception, when Satan is dealt with and the new heaven and the throne comes down and everybody stands before the throne to be judged.
Okay, so I think in 1859, when the Carrington event happened, that was the great switcheroo, or that's what I termed it as. But that's when Lucifer or Satan, I'm not really sure which one would be, because the Bible's not even very explicit in who it's going to be or anything. So whoever, I think they came down in 1859 during the Carrington event, because we're in an electrical universe, we're electrical beings, and an electrical event to that magnitude that would shock people who are working with very low electromagnetic frequency in a telegraph versus what we have today, and the conductivity of our electrical equipment is tremendous, and they were being shocked, and it shut down everything for days. I think that is when the Satan was loosed on the earth for the short period of time, and I think that it may be coming to an end. I don't know when, but I feel like it's coming to an end, soon. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was going to tell you. The other person that I met in the other group, we were talking this morning, actually, and it says that Gog and Magog would surround the city of the camp of the saints, right?
Okay. So I think Gog and Magog was World War II, was Germany and USSR.
I think we're on the verge of the Gog and Magog, because it says just before the Gog and Magog war kick off, God steps in.
Okay. So I'm not very familiar with it. So go ahead on your thought. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Let me pull it up and we'll kind of go through it.
So you're saying because they're ramping up right now for a war between America and China, and
so they specifically said, hold on, let me type this in and I can think again. Okay, so clearly speculation, nobody knows, but we aren't unloading containers right now. And America is basically surrounded with cargo ships that's supposed to have goods in it, right? What if it's not goods? What if it's people? What if it's armies?
So, wow. So do you think that the Chinese
Let me just say that is total speculation. Like, I'm not saying it, but it fits that they're not unloading these ships, and they say it's because they don't have people or they don't have trucks, but that's not true.
Yeah, we definitely, that's all lies, of course. That's interesting that they would be surrounding us. And I guess they could have anything hidden in them. They could have holes all over. So it doesn't mean that they're actually in container ships, like dying in there. They could actually have plenty of stuff. And they're used to living in close quarters over in China. And
well, let me just read you what it says, because it's very interesting.
I haven't heard anyone else mention anything like that, and that's very interesting.
So the cargo ships off the North of American coast, I believe they are full of people. I believe it is Gog and Magog. That's the reason they aren't unloading until the time is right. I think North America is the camp of the saints. We have never been invaded. Both countries are founded on Christian principles, which I'm assuming they're talking about Canada. In fact, the entire Western culture is Christian based and known as First World.
Yeah, even Mexico is Catholicism.
Do what?
Mexico, they're very big into Catholicism and Christ.
Right. We have never been invaded. Oh, I read that already. Mass immigration is Gog and Magog. They are soon going to be on our shores and have us surrounded.
Wow, that is
right.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I know, big, right? This morning already.
Wow.
That'd
be quite the surprise. That'd be quite the Trojan horse.
Well, and I mean, so I believe that the Northern Lights are the lights, the glory of the throne. That's why you can only see it in the north, because his throne is right above the North Pole, right in the center of flat Earth. And I think the Northern Lights are the glory of the throne through the water above and the firmament. I think because we just had a solar flare or whatever, and the Northern Lights reached all the way down to like Nebraska, like super far down, right?
Yeah.
Well, this has been happening for the last couple of years. And of course they say, oh, well, the sun is going to explode, or, you know, whatever. They've been telling us all this crazy stuff. The sun's doing dumb stuff, right? It's what they're telling us. But if you're a flat earther and you believe the sun is inside the firmament, which the sun and the moon are the only two lights up there that don't look like dancing lights in water.
Right.
Then it's inside the firmament, right? And that's what the Bible tells us, inside the firmament. It can't be the sun that's causing that. So what if, and this again, it's just speculation, it's just my thoughts. What if the Northern Lights kind of doing their thing is Yahuwah, telling the enemy, back off, or the throne getting ready to come down?
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's interesting. I feel, so I have my crown chakra. Are you familiar with the chakra system?
I am, and I actually have questions about that.
Okay, we can get into that in a moment.
Yeah.
So the crown chakra, I have mine is open to where I feel magnetism always coming in and out of my head, and I compare that to the Northern Lights. And if you look at an old map of where Hyperborea have the 4 islands around the central island, and there was some kind of cube, some kind of square drawn there, and I think that's where the black cube of Saturn worship comes from, because I believe that is the magnet that maybe.
I thought it was a mountain.
What, Hyperborea?
In the center, yeah, the mountain in the center that is the magnet. The magnetism comes from.
It could be. I always seen it drawn as a square.
Yeah, and then the chasm around it where the water swirls and goes into, and then the 4 islands with the 4 rivers.
Right. So I can relate that feeling of magnetism from there to the top of my head and what I'm feeling in the crown chakra. So go ahead. What was your question about that?
Well, so, okay. I have been being led to this and to understand it. And of course, growing up in the church, this is magic. This is the taboo stuff we're supposed to stay away from, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've been diving into this, and I think the people who have all these super negative effects from COVID, it's because they believe that they will.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people who are terrified of it that are getting sick and dying. Because even science is proving that our bodies, every organ in our body can heal on its own. The placebo effect is well documented. They call it the placebo effect to keep from telling you your body will heal with nothing.
Right.
Because I've heard the placebo effect my whole life, and I never put 2 and 2 together until the last 6 months. The placebo effect means you didn't get any medicine and you got better anyway because you believed.
That's your thought. Yep.
Yeah. And so me and my cousin have actually been talking about this, and I'm like, I do think the Bible has been altered.
Mm-hmm.
I do think things have been added. We know things have been taken out. Because like chapter 13 of Romans makes no sense to me, where Paul tells people to listen to the government and obey and do everything that they say as he sits in prison for disobeying. Doesn't make any sense. So anyway, my question is specifically for Christians, because up until the last, 2 years, the chakras and magic and all this other stuff, you're supposed to, it's taboo, leave it alone. And the Bible talks about necromancy, but I think that's the dark magic. We are supposed to leave that alone. I think there's a front door and a back door, basically. Yeah. Is what I'm saying. And I do think we were, like I was talking to my cousin, I've been being led to this, even though I've been taught my whole life that's leave it alone, right? Mm-hmm. I think we were meant to understand energy and how our bodies interact with the vibration of everything around us, the frequency of everything around us. We were supposed to understand how to heal. Mm-hmm. We were always meant to have that. And of course, you read the books of Enoch and it talks about, what the fallen angels taught. And I think they taught them the back door. Yeah. Like how to use all of this without having Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
And people say, well, no, you're not supposed to use any of it. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because the Bible says that once you're saved, like once you have Yeshua living inside of you, you have all the power he had. He could raise people from the dead. He could heal. He was telepathic. He could, he could understand people's thoughts without them having to say it.
Right.
The Bible tells us indirectly we are supposed to have that.
Right. And the Bible is missing his age of 13 to 29, which I highly believe that he was out learning the Eastern mysticisms. He was learning how to become a yogi. He was doing all the things that he was learning from Buddhists. Buddha was one of his teachers, maybe not directly, but he was learning his teachings, because, there's almost identical in many of the things they talk about, but Jesus takes it a step further in that he actively stops the evil where nobody else did. Everybody else just called it duality and said, oh, it has to exist. But Jesus is like, no, it doesn't. We can actively stop it. We can be as love and light as these New Agers want to talk about, but we can actively stop the evil from happening. Both of those things can exist at once. So yes, Jesus or Yeshua, to me, that's what he was learning. And the way that I came to him was through spirituality and psychedelics and conspiracy theories, and then an injury is what really brought me to him, and I was saved, and I was in this nirvana-like state for 10 days of pure bliss. Just nothing could make me upset. I think that's probably when my relationship with him entered a whole new level, and he entered me, as you were just saying, and ever since then it's just been on this trajectory that I can't really explain. But it all started with the energy centers, and I'm being led to do energy work, and I help heal people, or help them heal themselves, through using the name of Jesus Christ and meditation. We have to know our bodies, and we have to know where we are ill, because as you said earlier, that there were shame and guilt came off of you that you didn't know existed in you. That happens with everybody, and we have the power to start to get all that stuff off of us, as I did a lot of work to myself to get me to a point to then I could be saved. So I saved myself from, I was in the basement, and I saved myself from the basement and went to the first floor, and that's when Jesus could save me. I was too far gone. And I don't want to say that Jesus doesn't go down far to get people, but I am in the camp that I used to be in, the camp of you have to save yourself, nobody's coming for you. But then I was saved by Jesus, and I was like, well, wait a second. All those people that said they've been saved by Jesus, they didn't need to save themselves. So there's something else with that. So now I'm of the opinion that if you're not saved by Jesus, just in your natural life, that you have to save yourself by doing things to raise your frequency, raise your vibration, to become a good person enough to where Jesus can then elevate you even higher.
See, and I don't think you have to do anything. I think he will meet you right where you are when you ask, but it takes a consciousness to make that decision.
Right. So yeah, so that's what I mean is the
I
free
get it.
will.
I get what you're saying.
Well, see, that's where some people, I think exactly what you're saying is some people, they don't need to do anything. But some other people, like myself, for instance, I had done so many bad things in this lifetime. You know, I'm not even going to talk about possible past lifetimes, but in this lifetime, I did very many bad things. And I had to make so many free will decisions of doing the right thing that I could then get to that point that I could be saved. But he did meet me exactly where I was, but it wasn't like I call myself saved when I had that 10-day bliss in January. When that injury happened, the demons were chased out of me. That I felt the very first words I said was, "Oh my God, I've been saved by Christ." That was just what came out of my mouth. I could feel it. And I related to Christians that say this. And I've never been in church one day in my life. You know, I went to Sunday school as a child, but I never went to church. And I related to that so heavily. But it was myself that had to make all these free will decisions to get me to that point.
Right. I mean, I kind of agree with that. Yeah. I mean, you have to make the choice.
Right.
And I mean, that's just all there is to it. He will meet you wherever, no matter what you've done.
Exactly.
There's forgiveness for all of it. The spiritual warfare has just been insane lately. So I've been cranking good spiritual warfare music because I just feel like the more you press in, the more you do for God. I mean, as soon as you step out of line, because the demons come after you. I mean, they whisper to you with temptation and do this and do that. But once you get on the path and you step out for Christ in faith and you put down your temptations, I mean, they're after you in a whole different way, which I'm sure you understand.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just been the last 2 years have been intense. But like I'm saying, I've been blessed in ways that without going through everything, and it's not going to mean as much to somebody else, just saying it as it did to me.
Yeah, they have to experience it.
Yeah, it's just so effortless, and it was so beautiful. Either way. Anyway, so in relation to the chakras, like I have been led to study that and understand, like, just the power of our thoughts. Like, until the last 6 months, it didn't make any sense to me why it says in the Bible that just thinking it is sin. Right? Because just thinking it puts the frequency out.
Okay, so yeah, so when I realized this, I listened to, are you familiar with the Christ letters that were written in 2000? Okay, that's on YouTube. You can go look up the Christ letters. And it's a woman channeling. I don't know if it's actually channeling, in some way Jesus is coming through her and telling her some things to write down, and she writes them. And one of the things that really got me was when Jesus said, if you see your neighbor's wife and you are to think that, oh, what would it be like to have sex with this woman? Not only are you experiencing that, but you are putting that in her thought patterns. That enters her mind because we are telepathic. And I, coming from a telepathic point of view, I was like, holy shit. Like, that makes so much sense that if I'm thinking it, she's also, to some degree,
receiving it.
Yes. Yep. And if that is a sin in itself, so that is what really got me to think like, oh, I got to clean up my thoughts.
Well, and I have always wondered, like, specifically with married people, like, this person's married, but these people, how do you have the gall to go up to somebody and even start that conversation like that? I've always thought there had to be some level
of unspoken word.
Yeah. of some kind of unspoken communication more than flirting. Like, because somebody has to open that door. Because, I mean, if you were to start that with somebody that is not receptive, I mean, they tell on you,
Right.
So I don't know. I've always just kind of thought that. But then I also think that like fluoride in the water and the heavy metals in the food and it's all to like dumb down. I mean, we use less than 10%
your pineal gland. Yeah.
And our pineal glands, we're like, even science, even people who don't believe in God say we should be able to do more than we can because of this gland that.
Yeah. And the way that I opened my pineal gland was exercise is a really good way. Sweating a lot, being out in the sun. If you're doing sun gazing, but rather than have your eyes open, you can do sun gazing at sunrise and sunset. That will definitely help. But you can only do a little bit at a time, and it builds up time. But what you can do always is you can face the sun directly with your eyes closed, and it will have the same effect on you. That you'll just pull, you just have your eyes closed, the sun's right there, and you pull the energy into your head. You just think of a spot like right here, and you just pull with that section, and that will help decalcify. Also, psychedelics help me open it up, and I'm not suggesting anyone just go do that, but that was another thing for me. So it was exercise, sun gazing, and psychedelics really got that going. And with the heavy metals, in our foods, in our air, in our water supply, I've been drinking zeolite a lot lately, and it's been really, I mean, my meditations, I've been seeing just metal coming out of me, and I saw metal coming out of my daughter's armpits, and I didn't know her deodorant had aluminum in it at this time. I just saw she popped into my vision, and because I was drinking the zeolite, that metal was coming out of her as well. And then I went and checked her deodorant, and it was difficult to find women's deodorant that doesn't have aluminum in it. So everything that you're saying is things that I've learned through different means than you have, through the spiritual type of chakra type of stuff. So
well, and I mean, I've been led to all of it, not necessarily through my own thoughts. It's almost like I'm tapping into a frequency somebody else's thoughts, that, and I find most of it between 2 and 4 a.m. So, and if you go look at like what that means or whatever, that's the Holy Spirit waking you up. So,
and you're in Kentucky where the veil is very thin over there.
Yeah. So, most of everything that I find, it's very specific. Like, go look at this page. Like, it's not just go scroll Facebook or, go look at Telegram or whatever. I mean, it's very specific. Like, look at this channel, look here, go there, listen to this person. And I mean, I've just been inundated with people messaging me, comments on stuff. Of course, I try to read through the comments of everything because there's so much good information in there that other people have done. And very few, there's been a couple of podcasts or YouTube videos that I've been led to watch that were just nothing. They're just kind of crappy, but the rest of them were just top notch, good information that I'm just like, wow. And this is like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So I think and I've been doing a heavy metal detox, a parasite detox.
Yeah, I did the parasite detox as well. So, there's another thing that we have in common. And we don't speak on a regular basis, just so anyone listen. We spoke a few times here and there about not this stuff, about the Millennial Kingdom, the post-Rapture, and all that type of stuff. So this is, you're blowing my mind that we're both connected to the same spirit so strongly that we're both just being led to the same things, just in our thoughts, and that's how it works. It's our conscience,
right? Yeah. And I've just been, man, and even with my kids, because I'm doing the detox with my kids too. Interesting side note for you and your listeners, my 2-year-old got hand, foot, mouth from my niece who had been over it for 2 weeks. So it was like 3.5 weeks past her first day sick, right? I treated him with the I word
Okay.
3 days, his blisters were gone.
Wow.
I started all 3 of my kids the same day because he had been sick. I put it the night it started, his first blister came up. I knew just instantly that's what it was. It looked like a bug bite, but I knew just instantly that had to be what it was because he was around my knees. I put him in a detox bath. And then it took me like 2 days to think of it for some reason. So it was like day 3, but you could see like the blisters start to come up and you can see them before they've actually come out. And it was going to be really bad. It was going to be really bad. He's going to have a really bad case. So this is like day 3. I started putting it in his belly button. He didn't even ingest it. I just put it in his belly button. He was already at the point where he had a fever. He wouldn't eat, the blisters in his mouth and all that jazz. So I started putting it in his belly button. I mean, just barely touch my finger to it, just a little bit, put it on his belly button. I thought, I'm going to do it to all 3 kids, so hopefully I can prevent this, right? 12 hours after I did it to him, and I was doing it 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night, right before bed. And he ate breakfast the next morning. He hadn't eaten anything in 2 days. He ate breakfast the next morning. The blisters were calloused over, like scabbed over already. And Saturday was 2 weeks, and everything's gone, scabs and everything. And my niece is a month out, and she still has scabs that are still healing.
Wow. So I was using Paracel. That's amazing. I was using Paracel, which is mostly wormwood. I'm not sure what's in this Joe Rogan medicine exactly, but this one that I used had wormwood, clove, garlic were the 3 main ingredients.
Are you sure you didn't have black walnut?
Yeah, it had black walnut as well. Yeah.
So that's the one I've got. And I have them on one that's similar now, but because he was sick, because the I word is a little bit more stronger, yeah. And I didn't want to do that all the time.
Right.
But they were sick. And so actually I shared something on Facebook about the C word, about, viruses don't mutate to be more deadly. They mutate to be more contagious,
right,
but less deadly. So, and of course, Facebook slapped a fact check on it, right? So I go through and I read the fact check, and I usually don't read them. And something just told me to read this one. We know who that something was. Something just told me to read it. And I go through and I'm reading it, and it says, viruses are ever-changing parasites, ever-mutating parasites. These are the exact words of the fact check that's slapped on. I was like, oh my gosh. So when my kid got sick with hand, foot, mouth, that's a virus, right? Which the fact check told me is
ever-mutating parasite.
I tried an anti-parasitic, 12 hours, this kid is better. I couldn't believe it. Wow. My oldest daughter never got it at all. She's 7. And my middle daughter got 15 spots maybe, but they never hurt her. They'd come up, they were a little bit red, but they were already scabbed over and healing before they ever even, I couldn't, like, my mind was completely blown. So just for your listeners.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, because when I took them, I could feel. So at first I saw in my meditation that there were worms in my body. It would look like worms stuck in mud. And I was like, all right, I'm starting this. So I started. And then after the first 2 days, my stomach felt very gargly. Like it was like a battle going on.
That my husband was, yeah.
And then after that, it was like, oh, I was much better. And I saw that they were flushing out of me. And then I had my girlfriend Mimi, she started it. And the day after, or maybe it was that night that she started it, we were meditating together because she had been going through some stuff, mental and emotional stuff, spiritual stuff. So not even a physical issue, but I was wanting her to take it because I'm like, look, there is something in you and I want you to take this. So we meditate, and then we were able to do something and release her from this thing. What I did, I pulled a mirror out of her and she just became one again, and she cut the head off of the snake that was in her. And like I was right there with her watching it happen. So I'm describing it to her, and she was like, she was amazed that I literally saw what she was doing. And like I was like, look, I told you you should take this Paracel. Everybody should be taking the parasite medicine. And then I told her that I was like, I want the girls to start doing it, our kids. And she was like, okay. And now we haven't started yet, but me talking to you right now and you telling me what you just told me is confirmation that yes, I should be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So all three of mine, actually, you know, I did it with them. And I mean, my oldest was having nightmares, like to the point she didn't want to go to sleep, and she wouldn't sleep without her dream catcher. And of course, I'm over here thinking it only works because you believe it works, you know.
Right.
But I'm not gonna tell my 7-year-old that, like, she wants the night dream catcher, she can sleep with the dream catcher. But I do try to explain to her that, you know, your thoughts have power. So, you know, when you think I'm not gonna have a nightmare, you won't. So she's not quite old enough to grasp it yet, but when are they old enough to grasp it? You don't know. So you just start talking to them from the very beginning, right?
Well, that's
awesome. Since I started her on this, she's not having nightmares.
Yeah, the parasite's gone. It's not in her brain any longer.
Right. Well, and then you start looking at what all parasites are responsible for: anxiety, depression, ocular degeneration, cancer. I mean, the list is just forever long. So anyway, we won't stay on that forever, but I just thought that that was important to note with
that's
C
super
word
important.
floating around out there.
And it's super important that you and I are doing essentially the same types of things are happening to us around the same types of time. You know, I think that this is just further evidence that God is really coming down and readying certain people. And, you know, people should be taking notice of it at this point.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely agree. 100%.
Yeah. So as we wind down here, we got a few minutes left here. Is there anything left that we haven't covered that you wanted to talk about?
Not really. No, I was going to read you this about the Gog and Magog. I've got it pulled up.
Okay, yeah, let's get to that. Man, this was one of the best conversations ever. If you ever want to come back on and talk just to kick it like this, I mean, this was great. You are a wealth of knowledge. I mean, you know a ton of stuff.
Thank you. I to be honest, I think that's one of the reasons that I personally was called, because I enjoy research. So if I wasn't researching this, I'd be researching something else. So I definitely feel called to do something. I don't know what that something is yet.
Yeah, you'll know when it's time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people keep asking me, I mean, my friends and the person that I did the first
podcast.
Yeah, he's like, you know, you should do your own podcast. I'm like, no. No.
Okay.
I'm okay with going on other people's podcasts right now. I'm not saying it's not in my future. It might be, but right now it just, no.
Maybe make some YouTube videos with under an alias.
Listen, I'm okay with just giving that information to somebody else and letting them run with it. I think I'm more of like the background person who finds the information and sends it to people.
Well, hey, I definitely want you in my background if that's what you're doing. You send me all of it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I send out all kinds of stuff. I'll add you to my list to send stuff to. So anyway, it says Revelations 29. This is where I believe that we are. It says, and they went out on the breadth of the earth, encompassed the camp of the saints about, and that beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. So this is where I think, like, once we get, 8, I didn't read it, the one before that, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. So that's where it's talking about the Gog and Magog war. And then the next one, it talks about surrounding the camp of the saints. and that just before they attack, they'll be devoured with fire. So that's why I don't think it could have been World War II unless this has already been fulfilled, right?
Yeah.
So, and then that's full preterist, and then I don't know where we are, understand anything else past that, if that makes sense.
So when I'm not familiar with what's full preterist, I'm not familiar with that word.
A full preterist means that you believe all of Revelation has been fulfilled, that he was loose from the pit, the 1,000-year reign, loose from the pit, already thrown into the lake of fire, new heaven and new earth are here.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that.
Yeah, so and my cousin kind of hinges on this to that we are the new heaven and new earth, and that with Jesus in us, we have everything that we need to overcome sin. But the way I understand it is that because Satan is the deceiver, the reason for sin, right? Once he's dealt with and gone, there shouldn't be sin at all. And then he was like, well, humans and their dark hearts. And I was like, well, they didn't have dark hearts until Satan.
Right. Yeah, we're definitely in the time of deception, because nothing is as it appears. Nothing in this world there's nothing true about this place. So, yeah, I think that we're definitely still in the age of deception, and that it's ending. And
yeah, so Revelation's 29 or 28 and 9, somewhere around in there, the Gog and Magog, they're being assembled for war against the saints. Which to me, that is like ever so clear, because most of the people who won't take the vaccine are Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And they are being persecuted around the world.
So it's not even necessarily that it's China against America, because I did say that earlier. But we know that our president is working with the Chinese, and it's not the Chinese, it's the communists. So maybe I should stop using the word Chinese, and it's not even communist. It's just Satan. Satan's team is all over the earth, and they're waging war against us. And there's probably going to be a time where they try to start arresting us, and they're already calling us domestic terrorists. They're now in our bank accounts over $600, not just yet, but soon to be probably. Forcing vaccinations. This is not free any longer, where we thought that we once were free. It's the time has come where they are closing in on us, and they're going to try to start plucking us out of society. And so what you're saying is God is going to stop them by fire.
Yep. So that's what it says.
Do you have any ideas on, is this a comet falling from heaven, meteors falling from the heavens, or what's your take?
Well, I don't really know. I would think not.
Think they'll just burn up and incinerate in a combustion? What's it called?
So
spontaneous combustion.
Well, if you go on and then you look through there, it says that an angel is in the sun that keeps it on its track, right?
Right.
So if an angel is in the sun that keeps it on its track, I could zap you. If I'm an angel and I can control the energy of the sun, I can zap you, but not you.
So are you familiar with the movie They Live?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so in that movie, it's from the 80s. It's a really good watch. You should, if you can, you should watch it.
What's it called? They Live?
Yeah. So what ends up happening is, you've seen the memes for it, where the guy puts on the glasses and now he can see what the advertisements really say. And when he takes them off, he sees the advertisements. So you've probably seen memes for this. It's Rowdy Roddy Piper. So They Live, eventually when he has the glasses on, he can see that it's like some kind of beings are pretending to be human. And once he puts the glasses on, he can see that they're not human. So he can see who's who. So my kind of idea that I was just talking about, I think yesterday actually, was that there's going to be some kind of solar flash that occurs and takes us all to our next bodies, which would be like our eternal bodies.
Or glorified bodies, yeah.
Yeah, but not in the as you said, a giant, but maybe in like not a physical way, that we would all die simultaneously, and we would see each other in the astral world, in the like ghost kind of type of thing, like everything's a blueprint, and we would be able to see all of that. And that those beings might just die and burn away because they're not going to be coming with us.
Interesting thought.
And that would be the new Earth, because it would be a blueprint type of Earth. Because as a psychic, and as anyone that's been in psychedelic trips or astral projection, lucid dreaming, this type of thing, we all come to the same place that is the astral world that underlies this false reality with solid walls and solid colors. What we see there is the outline of things. So like we're looking at this computer now, instead of having a filled in screen, it would just have an outline, would have a color, and something would be projecting out of it, almost like the way R2-D2 in Star Wars would project something. That's how, yeah, so that's how it is in that world. Everything is see-through, but it's outlined, so you can see things through other things and that, but nothing solid.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so interesting that you say that too, because that was one thing I wanted to touch on. It was in the videos, the 2 videos of the Nephilim look like clowns. It was talking about demons either being in a person or attached to a person.
Right.
And so you know how like I'm looking at my screen right now and it doesn't have the lines running across it, but if I looked at my screen through my phone, you can see the lines. And I mean, you've seen all of the movies where like it's a scary movie and you can't see the scary thing without looking through a camera or you know, some kind of video type equipment that breaks down the frequencies. Right. So it talks about, I was looking for it while you were talking, crystalline.
Yeah, crystalline bodies.
Well, no, it's called crystalline something, like that's what they called it, where like if I was recording you in the camera, your face turns into that black and white zigzag looking pattern, and people who know, like us who are in the know of this spiritual realm, it's a demon manifesting on the person talking, or the person's not a human, they are a demon.
Oh, well, the electromagnetic frequency.
Yeah, so the camera's breaking that frequency down, and you see that black and white, like you saw with the DMT, the gestures, and you know the whatever. They're talking about how people who take those drugs can see that dimension of this realm. They can see that spiritual dimension, and they see those clowns and those jesters and those demons running around here. So anyway, I was looking for it. I'll have to send you the videos. I have them saved on YouTube. I was looking for the name of whatever it's called, but it's like
definitely send me them.
It references Beetlejuice and a couple of other characters from like movies that, or like the Saw movies with the black and white swirls or checkers or chevrons or whatever. That's all like an ode to that spiritual dimension,
like Twilight Zone,
of the Nephilim, of the demons.
Well, that's very interesting. I gotta cut short here because I got a thing coming up in a few minutes. But this was one of my favorite conversations. I want you to stay hold though. We're going to say goodbye to our audience. Is there anywhere where you want our audience to find you, or is there anywhere you want our audience to look at? Anything particular they should get in touch with?
I mean, I follow the Biblical Flat Earth group. There's a Tartaria Mud Flood Research group. There's a Tartaria, the Millennial Reign of Christ group, which is where most of the information or ideas for the information I've talked about here have come from. So, you know, not everybody's talked about what I've talked about in there, but what I've found in there has led me to finding.
Put these different things together.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to say goodbye to our audience. Goodbye, everybody. We will talk to you later.